Maybe it is. We got BLG in the green room. I'll skip the break for now. BLG, let's bring him up now. The great BLG from Bleeding Green Nation joining us now. Sorry, I just said it. Bleeding Green Nation. BLG, how you doing this Wednesday morning, my man?
Doing good, guys. How's it going?
Good, man.
Good, BLG. I need your help because, man, I am fighting a losing battle. I knew when Jalen Hurts said impose, people were going to run with that. And boy, the Eagles have found the formula, and it's just to line up under center and hand the ball off. And that is going to make them successful moving forward. Is that correct, BLG?
What, the more under center?
Yes.
Is that
more under center? More under center. The creativeness of going under center has unlocked the potential of this Eagles offense.
I don't think it's that simple, but I don't think it's hurt either. I think they had their most efficient, effective offensive game in a long time when they scored on 7 of their 8 drives in this game. Doesn't hurt to do it, but certainly it is not the magical fix-all, just like blitzing isn't the magical fix-all on defense.
Yeah, I would agree with that. BLG, have you noticed the change, though, in the offense? I mean, we've been talking about it, and it certainly seems like, at least from my perspective, it doesn't mean I'm right, but that they've embraced a little bit more of a physical nature on offense. They've tried to impose their will. There's that word again. Have you noticed that, or is it more boiled down to that they've been more successful and now everybody points to the running?
I think in this past game, I think that's an example of what they ideally want to do in terms of how they kind of basically did the opposite of what people traditionally say, run to set up the pass, and they really passed to set up the run. Late in the game there where they just take control and just don't even give the Bengals a chance by going on that long scoring drive to really ice the game. I think that's, ideally what they want to do. But there's no doubt that, coming out of the bye week here, I think just even in the neutral split kind of game script situations there, you're looking at more heavy run overall. But I think the reason why a lot of Eagles fans are feeling good coming off of this game is that while the run is a nice weapon, really, really nice one when you can lean on Saquon Barkley, the ceiling of the offense ultimately is only as good as the passing game is. And I think that's why, seeing Jalen Hurts look this good, makes everyone feel good.
Now, I agree with that sentiment, obviously. The ceiling of the offense needs to be about the passing game. But the concern is if you believe, and a lot of people believe, the Eagles have scaled back purposefully, is that a good thing when it comes to Jalen Hurts and that ceiling? Is that a good sort of, hey, we have to scale this back to help the quarterback? I don't think it's good.
Not in a perfect world, no. I think it's a matter of, the scope. If you're doing that for a game or two to kind of buy you time to figure things out with the passing game, especially if it's against inferior opponents like the Browns and the Giants, then yeah, that can be okay. You're buying yourself time to kind of figure it out there. But yeah, it can't be like you're doing that the rest of the season. At some point, the quarterback actually has to take control and has to, be the onus of the offense, especially in these high level matchups. So if it's coming to that point and you don't have the guy who answers the bell there, I think that's where it's the problem. I don't think it's a problem if you do it, in a certain matchup or for a short term kind of fix.
BLG, yesterday, Brian Baldinger put out a video breaking down film, and then he responded to somebody and said a few guys were tired of the offense and spoke up. Now, I'm not boots on the ground. You guys are more involved in that facility a lot more than I am. What's your takeaway? What's your reaction to that comment from Brian Baldinger, who is pretty connected with guys like Lane Johnson, and some of those people?
Well, Baldy needs to unblock me, first of all. I don't know why he did.
He blocked?
I'm blocked.
He's on a block list. Wow.
I've never said a bad word about Baldy,
wow.
But so I didn't see that. So I don't know the exact, I guess, context of everything. So that was about the offense now, you're saying?
Well, I'll give you the context. Baldy put up and said use of play action passes really help with the rhythm and timing of his throws. Receivers love it, and the O-line are thankful for it. Somebody responded to him and said, any idea why it took him 8 weeks to do this? And he said, a few guys were tired of the offense and spoke up. That was the context.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I think players having an input, there's countless examples of that. I think once upon a time, Jim Schwartz, Malcolm Jenkins going up to him and being like, hey, we have to simplify this defense right now. I think that was like a game when they were trailing against the Giants once upon a time at home. You can go back to the snow game and Chip Kelly, and was it Kerry Williams? It was like, just throw the ball up there. It's hard to defend. Or whatever. There's like, there's different examples. Certainly, I think of the players stepping up and trying to give the coaching staff an idea of what works. I think getting healthy obviously has been a big factor here as well. After they were just so banged up heading into the bye, but it is a weird offensive flow going from what we saw in week 1, and that felt like, okay, this is like the new kind of offense with Kellen Moore and play action, pre-snap motion. They're seeing that. Obviously, the turnovers were an issue, but everything outside of that looked like promising. And then it kind of went away. The injuries were part of that. And now it started to come back. So it's kind of been a weird up and down with that.
Yeah, poor Baldy signaling Lane. But Lane said, hey, they were constipated a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
So Lane doesn't have a problem voicing frustration when the offense isn't successful. How much of this change is lifted to just being ahead in the fourth quarter? I mean, we talk about snaps under center. Against the Giants, they ran it 14 out of 15 times in the fourth quarter. Everybody's talking about how much of it. And Nick Sirianni said, basically when he was asked after the game about being under center, he said, yeah, a little bit of that is just the way the game played out in different situations that happened in the game. I think we've had some big leads here the last couple of weeks that probably make that number balloon even more. I mean, he says it. Zander won't listen. I say it. Nobody will listen. Is it just a matter of how the game's personality more than any dramatic shift in the offense? Just better execution, I would argue.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think they did a little bit more, under center, like play action passing than we had seen earlier in the game there, but on which Jalen Hurts is really good on. And those, as shockingly, that's like an easy button for quarterbacks in the NFL. You definitely want to mix that in there again, more than the extreme.
Well, most of their play action BLG was from the gun or pistol.
Yeah, a lot of it was. Yeah.
It was the offset, sort of RPO play action, not the traditional back to the deep ends Kirk Cousins play action.
Right. Yeah. But I think that's like the ultimate thing there. It's like they don't need to do it. It doesn't have to be every play. It just has to be more than it's not an element of the offense. I think that's basically what everyone wanted to see. And I think you're starting to see more. Again, the big thing to me is just like the way how this Bengals game went, especially more so in the second half. Like that's what this Eagles team ideally is built to be. They're built to be the front runners, where you pass the, establish this lead, and then you can just take control of the game and go on those long drives where the other team just can't stop you, to kind of run out the clock and add some more points like they did in this game. And like that's the formula, and that's why kind of making the big deal about the slow starts is that when you get off to those faster starts, I think that just really fits what this team wants to be ideally.
Yeah, no doubt about it. BLG, have you seen enough from the offense to believe that they can? I'm not going to say they're going to be the 22 offense. It's obviously a different looking team. Players evolve, but at least the ceiling of that type of offense. Have you seen enough in the last couple of weeks to believe they can get back to that ceiling, or do you still have doubts?
I mean, it's hard to expect Jalen Hurts obviously to play like this level every week, but I think, I needed to see that. I think everyone needed to see that to kind of be reminded that he can do that, or at least approaching that. And you're going to need to see that more consistently. You want to see him stack some of these kind of performances. Again, it's not about being as great as he was, where he's, going 13-13 to finish the game like he did against the Bengals there. But you're looking for some more of that consistency. And yeah, I mean, that felt sustainable to me. I don't think it was just like, oh, they're, making fluky plays and that's how they won the game. No, like I think they imposed their will. To take your phrasing, I think that like everything they did there wasn't just about like, lucky kind of, plays. I think it was about like an actual offense that had flow and rhythm and it was in sync and was varied, and they did different things. Like, I think that's something to buy into, especially again when we kind of saw this in week 1, and that's a long time ago now. But it wasn't just like, okay, one game. They've done it before. Obviously, health and everything, there's going to be different factors there, and as teams adjust to what the Eagles are doing. But right now, I think this is sustainable. I believe in this.
Yeah, I think the talent is starting to impose its will on the offensive side of the ball, to use Jalen's term. I'm sick of talking about this offense, BLG. They did a great job, but I think it gets mired in the discussion. What should they do? Run, pass, blah, blah, blah. I want to talk about this defense because I'm starting to love this defense, and I did not think that was possible. And for all his reputation, Vic Fangio was living up to it, with the exception of Bryce Huff, I guess. But boy, the fourth down stop by Cooper DeJean. I mean, I go back to the Super Bowl, and you got veteran guys losing their discipline, and he does that perfectly. Keeps his eyes correctly, not wavered by the eye candy. Makes a great play on a true superstar in this league. We know how good Quinyon Mitchell's been. The linebackers, I mean, they were the 2 highest graded linebackers in the NFL by PFF. Could you ever imagine that when we're talking about the Eagles linebackers? Reed's been solid all year. CJ seems to be showing up a little bit more. Did you even imagine that this team could be where they are defensively?
Well, not especially not coming off of that Buccaneers game where it just felt like okay, what is like the hope for this unit if it's going to look that easy for the other offense? And maybe that game can just be chalked up to it was incredibly hot and they just weren't ready for that, and guys were tired and whatever. But yeah, I mean, the DeJean play on fourth down has been like, I've been thinking about that one and just how impressive that is for a rookie player to be lining up with Jamar Chase, like, and man coverage before the snap. He's running around like before the snap trying to match with him. And I was thinking about like how hard it must be to be running around before the snap and then somehow still like have the body control and wherewithal to like make that tackle in the open field. He had an open field tackle earlier in the game there. On Trent Irwin. It was right before the Bengals scored that rushing touchdown with Chase Brown. Anyway, but like just even again to make those kind of tackles, how many defensive backs just like end up flying by the guy? You see that regularly, and it's so hard to do. For him to have the body control, it's been really impressed with him. But to the defense's success as a whole, I mean, it's what, 3 games now? They've allowed 2 touchdowns. They really made the Bengals work for their offense in this game. Obviously, that like 10-minute drive, 17 plays.
It looked bad early. I'm like, oh, here we go. It's going to be 85% completion percentage. And boy, they just clamped down from that point forward. It was an amazing performance. And, Nakobe Dean has been, I don't know if Vic, I asked Vic, is it more of guys? I didn't want to say Nakobe's name, but that's who I wanted sort of the thought process on. I asked him basically, is it guys getting more comfortable with the defense, or is it you getting, knowing their skill sets better and putting them in better positions? And he said it's a little bit of both, but he went 75-25 player.
Sure.
Which Vic always does, and he should, because it is player first. But boy, when he's going downhill, he is a really good linebacker. The question is, you're going to get Jaden Daniels at some point when he's in space, or with a good tight end. Can he do that, or can the opposition take advantage of that? But boy, he's impressive going downhill, Nakobe Dean. I didn't see that coming, because he's looked great the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's almost just like, even if he can't do that and he is going to struggle in coverage, you can maybe live with that if just, because you're getting the positives otherwise. And maybe you can kind of just try to figure out how to work around that ultimately. And it could be a net positive for you, even if that's a specific area, obviously, where I think the Eagles will be tested more with teams
Yeah.
trying to take advantage of that at some point sooner than later. But again, like the positives in terms of just being a force in the run game. I mean, him and Zach Bond. I think Zach Bond had something like 6 stops, which PFF defines as a play. It's a failure for the offense. I mean, like that's a big number for context. Usually, like a good game for a player is having like 2 or 3 of those. I mean, Bond had 6. I think Nakobe had 4. I mean, those guys have just been. It's hard to, I'm sure, for Eagles fans to believe their team actually having linebackers who are good.
Yeah,
the 2 top-rated linebackers in the NFL last week.
BLG. You know what scares me though? How he's gonna see. I don't need to put assets in linebacker. That's what scares me a little bit.
Well, I mean, shoot, if these dudes play like this, keep them both here. I would try and get ahead of that Zach Bond extension if he's playing like this, and but we'll see how it goes. BLG, I'm going to give you some numbers real quick, and you kind of alluded to it, but just to bring clarity to what the numbers are since the bye week. First in points allowed, first in yards allowed per game, first in defensive success rate, second in sacks per game, and 5th in red zone scoring percentage. I mean, did we underestimate this defense, BLG? I mean, in a perfect world before the season started, I'm thinking, can we get the top 15? Can we get the top 12? I mean, right now they're playing like – now I'm not saying they're going to be first in everything through the end of the year, but did we underestimate what these guys can be? Could they be a top 10 defense in this league consistently?
Yeah, I think we need to see it, obviously against like higher level quarterbacks regularly. Now, what they did against Burrow and keeping him to, I think, like his worst passer rating of the year when he entered the game with the league's 3rd best passer rating. Like, that's obviously good. They kept Jamar Chase to like, I think either his 2nd worst or his worst game this year. That's a week after keeping Malik Neighbors to his worst game of his rookie career. Yep. Like I think that's something I look at and be like, okay, the defensive coordinator is coming up with plans to stop the other team's best players. And I think that's something to feel good about. And you can think that, he's finding answers. And I think, we've all talked about the hope for this defense when they were looking bad is that Vic Fangio's defense might take some time to kind of implement. And there's a big communication element. And that's probably going to take there's going to be some growing pains with that. So in theory, I think their outlook is looking good. But again, I guess have to see it more regularly against these top quarterbacks. They've also pretty much, knock on wood here, stayed, I think, pretty healthy defensively for the most part, and at least relatively to the offense where they were going through some struggles there. So that's something to monitor as well. But I think, this is a really encouraging stretch here for the defense. Again, no matter who you're facing, when you only allow 2 touchdowns in 3 games, it's pretty good.
Yeah, no doubt.
We are inside of a week, BLG, to the NFL's trade deadline next Tuesday. Something else big happened next Tuesday. But for NFL fans, that's the big story of the day. Already tons of moves around the NFL. Poor Doug Peterson lost his left tackle. Probably not going to have any of his receivers. So I like the Eagles this week. But to the trade deadline, you heard Nick Sirianni say he loves this team. Vic Fangio was asked about, is he pushing for any moves? He gave the classic one-word Vic answer, no. Now, coaches, there's coach speak involved. Mm-hmm. But I look at this team and I say, all right, where am I going to add? I said safety depth. Sidney Brown's back. I'm comfortable with that. Corner depth is good. You see Isaiah Rodgers making plays, even though Slay's not going to be out long. He might miss a week or 2. Who knows? We'll get a better indication when we get out there today. But offensive line, I said depth. And Fred Johnson shutting down Trey Hendrickson. Are you really going to do better getting the backup tackle somewhere else? I don't know. Tyler Steen's able to step in and play competently. They already wasted a 3rd-round pick on a receiver, so they can't go back there. Mm. Is there anything they could do? Outside edge rusher. And can you bench a $51 million edge rusher to make room for another edge rusher?
Maybe you could try to move off of his contract in a deal with something, but probably not.
That seems unlikely, right?
Yeah. The way I think I would, here's my advice, Howie Roseman, since I know you're watching the show here, is that I think, especially looking at his past deadline history, like the deadline trade specifically, and more so the buying ones than the selling ones like Zach Ertz and Joe Flacco. Jay Ajayi exception aside, haven't really been that great.
No.
And I think a common theme there is you're paying a decent price, and maybe some of them have seemed cheap, like Bayard last year, but I think that's like buyer beware, and I think that's what you get what you pay for sometimes.
Mhm.
And to me, I'm approaching this deadline if I'm Howie Roseman as either I'm like big game hunting, I'm really getting aggressive and trying to get a player who's just a no doubt about it kind of star, like Max Crosby or Myles Garrett, both of who I don't think will be moved. But that's the kind of waters I would be testing if I'm Howie Roseman, or basically kind of just do nothing at all. You want to give up, like a late round pick swap for a depth player, then whatever. But like I'm not operating in no half measures here. I'm either getting like star hunting here, or I'm really just not really looking to get involved in a serious way.
Percentage that Howie will make a move, because I'm at 90. He just likes to do shit, even if it's that late depth, as you said, pick for 6th, 7th round pick,
right? Or even like Eli, let's look at Eli Ricks. He's their 7th quarterback. He doesn't really play special teams. Like, can you flip him for another backup running back or something like that? Sure. I think you're looking at that. But otherwise, if it's not the star move, I just don't really think there's that really middle ground area that probably makes the most sense for value and fit here.
BLG, a 3-game win streak for this team, and you got Doug Peterson lurking against a team that looks like they're just in disarray. I mean, they trade their left tackle yesterday. They're down all these receivers. I look at this thing, I'm like, Eagles might blow this team off the page, but I don't want to fall into the trap game. How are you seeing this game coming up this weekend?
I mean, every reason on paper, the Eagles should be able to win this one comfortably with, like you say, and we'll see the injury report today, but the Bengals potentially being without their top 3 receivers here. They just traded away their starting left tackle, as we talked about here. The defense stinks to begin. So first of all, the offense middling to begin with. So, you take away with some of the best things going for it. Not sure what that looks like. Probably not too good. And then defensively, I mean, they've just been a really bad defense this year. They're allowing the highest passer rating in the NFL. And again, they're also banged up on that side of the ball. Old friend Ronald Darby and starting safety Andre Cisco both left the game in week 8 early. So we'll see where they're at with that. So, I mean, you said it, like, this can't be the letdown game, and it is kind of a letdown spot when you come off this big win against the Bengals and you're back at home, and the Jags just are terrible and banged up. So, if you're a serious team, you don't fall into that trap, and you take care of business, and you win the game, and you win it comfortably.
Yeah, I mean, I think the ceiling for this game is obviously the blowout, and that's what you want to see. And I think that proves you're, as you said, a serious team. The floor of this game, I think, is the classic play down to your competition, but in no way do I see them losing the game. Maybe it's a Cleveland type atmosphere where it's 20-16 and everybody's pissed off after the game, but I don't. Can you come up with any avenue for a Jags upset other than, I don't know, 4 turnovers?
Yeah, that's it though. It's beating yourself. If the Eagles beat themselves, which they are capable of doing, I've seen it happen before, they can absolutely give the Jags an avenue here to steal the game. But with Hurts taking care of the football, you feel better about that. I haven't checked the weather. We're not getting any weird weather, right? For Sunday's game.
No.
Like,
well, it's gonna be hot.
Okay.
I think it's gonna cool off for the game, then get hot again.
I'm seeing high as 61.
It's gonna be like 80 degrees today, by the way.
Wow. But yeah, unless it's anything weird like that, then honestly, no. There's really no good reason you should. I said that about the Browns game as well. Although I think they had their defense is at least a little respectable. But this Jags team, they're kind of just dead in the water here, and it's only really a matter of time until Doug gets fired, I'm sure.
I mean, the only thing I can look at this game and say maybe it's a matchup issue is Eagles are really good at running the ball right now, and the Jags have the 9th overall run defense. Now they suck against the pass, so it's going to be one of those games. Maybe they can force the Eagles to beat you through the air, which I guess some people could have questions about whether they'll be able to do that. I like A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith versus them, but I think that could be an interesting matchup when you look at this game. The Jags' run defense versus the Eagles' high-powered running attack, I guess, would be a good matchup. But I don't know if it's enough to move the needle, BLG.
Yeah,
They have a good nose tackle. I know their nose tackle is like constantly double teamed. But yeah, I mean, if you're worried about that, I can't be too concerned about that. Yeah, I did find it. Your buddy Jimmy Kemsky tweeted out that's crazy to me. The Saquon thing. I don't know if you saw Jimmy tweeted out the average yards before contact for Saquon Barkley, and then the average yards after contact. Obviously, the Giants' terrible offensive line. The career high average yards before contact was 2.5 in New York. It's 4.3 here. 4.3. And he's at a career low.
Yeah.
For average yards after contact. It was 2.8 early as a rookie when he was really explosive. And here it's 1.6. What do you make of that?
Well, he doesn't know what to do. He's getting too open. He has all this extra room. He's not sure what to do with it. I thought that was it a run or is it a pass or run on the swing pass, whatever it was, to the sideline there, like to bounce off Geno Stone like he did there. Like that's just like that's crazy. How many running backs just like or get stopped or pushed out of bounds there for him to like have that angle and still stay in bounds?
Yeah, I mean, that was pretty wild. I didn't know he's as I got to be honest. I didn't know he was as powerful as he is. I didn't expect that. Because and even if you go back to the Giants game on the first drive when it's like they were backed up 3rd and 14, 15 after a sack, and they dumped it off to him, and that's where he sort of ran over and ran onto the Giants sideline, just bowling through people. Didn't get the first down, but really impressive. He's been great, and that's what concerns me. Like their passing attack, as Zander was pointing out, doesn't that help the passing attack? Well, it really hasn't. They should be much better because they have this dominant run threat. And until this week against Cincinnati, hopefully they've gotten it going. But shouldn't it be much easier when you have that running threat?
Conventionally, yeah, you would think. But again, I think as Joe Boehner will probably like to remind everyone, you like to pass to set up the run. And I think that's where...
Well, that's true.
In this game, too.
Joe's right, I hate to say.
For sure. But, I think that's where, Saquon... But once you can do that, and it's not with all due respect, in years past, Kenny Gainwell or DeAndre Swift or Miles Sanders, there's a difference between those guys and those closeout situations, which they have done successfully at times, and Saquon, where I just feel like once you get into that situation, I just feel like he's not going to be stopped. He's just not going to be denied. And I think that drive at the end of the game that I keep talking about, that was just so, if you're a Bengals fan, just think about how hopeless you're feeling, where you're looking at okay, need to stop, just can't, just no chance, zero chance. So it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
BLG, sometimes I get ahead of myself, and that's all right. I'm going to get ahead of myself right now. Is this team looking to you like they could be a Super Bowl contender this year? I know it's early, but, a couple teams are starting to really show who they are. I think the Lions are the best team in the NFC right now. You think the Eagles are close to that category or can say that they're a Super Bowl contender this year right now?
Well, I think, they're in a good position to contend for this division lead. If Washington ever loses a game, Eagles might have to take that into their own hands and just beat them twice.
Yeah.
And I'm certainly, I would put them above the Eagles right now, just with the consistency that they've had for most of this year. I'd also put the Packers above the Eagles still. We'll see, how Jordan Love's health goes. And I'm really interested to see that Lions-Packers game this weekend. That's going to be a big one, of course. But yeah, those teams I'd put above the Eagles right now. Even though I know the Eagles beat the Packers, sure. But
I'm with you. I put the Packers ahead of them.
Yeah,
still
and
do.
it is close to me. It's not like a huge gap.
But I think Detroit's tier 1,
Exactly.
and nobody's in tier 1 with
100. Well, I think to me, and in the NFL, the Chiefs, I know they don't always make it look pretty, but until they actually lose a football game,
I agreed.
like I'm just not doubting Patrick Mahomes. And
No, they're back-to-back
I
Super
agree
Bowl
with
champs.
that.
I think they've earned the
Yeah.
benefit of the doubt.
But
Yeah.
but the Lions are a better team right now. Now, hey, they could lose to the Packers this week. That's a very difficult
Yeah.
game.
That's a
We'll
great.
see.
That's a great game. I'll tell you what, the Packers
Yeah.
are good, man. But Jordan Love's turning the ball over a lot. I mean, he's
He
a
is.
great
Turns it
quarterback,
over.
but
He's
yeah,
too reckless. But
he's got to get that together.
if he ever figures it out, as far as sort of marrying that, playmaking ability with being a little bit more careful with the football, they're going to be a problem. They're going to be a problem.
The way I would phrase it at the top, like the difference between the Chiefs and the Lions, who I think are, inarguably like the top two. I think the Chiefs are the most inevitable team in the league, and that like they're just going to win somehow. And I think the Lions are the most imposing team in the league. They're just like very scary.
I like it.
And
Jalen's word, it's imposing week. They're imposers. They're imposers. Yeah, the Detroit Lions. And by the way, they're frustrating, but I still think Baltimore is among the most talented teams. But when you lose to Jameis Winston,
I think their setup is also harder. I mean, to win in the AFC, it's a lot different than winning in the NFC. We talk about the Eagles' running game. Well, it's a lot easier to bully your way through the NFC than it is the AFC. You got to be able to pass in the AFC. I mean, you're going up against Mahomes, the Allens, the Burrows of the world. It's a different conference for sure, and that's where I would question the Ravens.
Yeah, and Lamar's playoff numbers, if you take a look at them, are not very good. Yeah. And also, I mean, no guarantee they even win their division. I mean, Steelers are in the lead right now.
Steelers, Mike Tomlin's amazing.
Yeah, I know he is. Russell Wilson all of a sudden looks like the old Russell
He's
Wilson.
Back.
He's dropping dimes, man. Dropping dimes downfield.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, BLG, great stuff, man. Kind of sounds like I know where you're leaning this week. I know you reserve the right to change it, but you leaning Eagles right now this weekend?
Yeah, I like Eagles to win and cover. I'm gonna take them.
Okay. Another blowout.
Yeah.
Boy, the people are gonna get fired up.
What's the line right now? It's got to be pretty.
I see it at 7.5, and I'll even go further. I'm gonna say the Eagles score on their first drive in the first quarter.
Yeah, baby.
First quarter points. First
I
quarter
like
points.
It, BLG.
At Brandon Gowton, make sure you follow BLG on the X platform. Read them, bleedinggreennation.com. Tremendous. Go there every morning to get your latest Eagles news. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, BLG. Good stuff there from Brandon Lee Gowton joining us on Birds 365. Love talking to BLG. Johnny Mac, great conversation today on the show about offense and Saquon and Vernon and Jalen and under center and play action, all sorts of fun
BLG
stuff.
is another high football IQ guy, but I'm boy, and I went back because I know you talked about
BLG to the list of giving you a concussion. Is that where you're
going?
No.
Because BLG gives I don't understand like the numbers, like you put out the numbers, whatever they were, and they went to 35% this week. And like Nick explains it. And literally right after the game, I think we've had some big leads here the last couple of weeks that probably makes that number balloon. Like, I don't know, like the people, and even Jalen, when Jalen said the imposing thing, he said, I think we're able, this was what I was trying to find before. I think that we're able to be the imposers. I think that says a lot. And then the very next thing he says is there are multiple ways to impose. You can do that from the gun. You can do that in the pass game. You can do that in the run game, in the action game, whatever it is, as long as you're in full control. Like, I think people cut off and then just shut off their mind and don't listen to the full description. Because when Nick was talking about the imposing, he was also talking, the specific example he brought up was Jack Stoll and pass protection. So that's where my frustration stems. They want to be a physical team, and his example was Jack Stoll and pass protection, who held up against, I think it was Sam Hubbard for about 15 seconds.
Yeah.
And I think people just turn it off and they hear that word and they go, yeah, and then just shut it down.
Well, BLG, I mean, it doesn't sound like he completely disagreed with what I was saying, John. Now, maybe he did a better job at explaining it than my dumbass did, and that's why it was
Well, now,
across better. But
in even, so they ran 21 plays under center, 38 in either the gun or the pistol, which is the highest percentage of under center they've done. 19 runs, 19 of those 21 plays were runs. 5 were tush pushes. Like it really starts to whittle away if you just look at the context.
the greatness of Saquon Barkley, Johnny Mack, is changing the Eagles' offense.
10, first of all, the greatness, and this is not because people think I don't like Saquon. This has nothing to do with Saquon because Saquon has overperformed anyone's expectations. And the passing game has gotten worse. So again, it's not necessarily it all comes back to Jalen Hurts. He played a very good game and everybody's excited, but we're 2 weeks away from Chase Daniels shitting on him, Dan Orlovsky shitting on him. So be wary when you're having these spikes in bipolar episodes.
Well, there's ebbs and flows. I mean, just because they were shitting on him 2 weeks ago doesn't mean they were wrong in that moment. Jalen was struggling. He looked better this week, and they gave him credit for
it. It does mean they overreact to the moment. So keep that in mind when they're overreacting to the next moment.
I mean, in a way, you get this. It's our. I mean, you're a reporter. You have a different job. I mean, when you're on a talk show, you got to react to what you see every week. That's how you. That's how it goes.
Fine, but you also add the context, and which I try to do every week. But
you do a great job of it. I think that's why we have such a loyal fan base here.
But I mean, when you talk about people making these grandiose proclamations off 1 week. And you realize if you watch this league, never mind for years, but even for a number of weeks, you see that ebb and flow that you're talking about. So you can't make these grandiose proclamations. Well, you can do whatever you want, but you're gonna be wrong if you start making grandiose proclamations, good or bad.
Yeah, welcome to talking about football. You're always going to be wrong at some point. I mean, shit.
95% of the time, it's never as good as you think it is. And 95% of the time, it's never as bad as you think it is, the highs and the lows. But yeah, I mean, and then I had to dig up Nick's quote. And that's what it was. He was asked specifically about the under center snaps. Yeah, a little bit of it is that it's just the way the game is played out in different situations that happen in the game. I think we've had some big leads here the last couple of weeks that probably make that number balloon, but it's good to be multiple in some different things and still do what you do well, blah, blah, blah. You said it for everybody. It's the game situation. So don't get, I'm saying, if you understand that, fine. If you don't get excited about it because it will be defined by the game situation. Success takes what it takes.
Good stuff, Johnny Mac. Let's get to our super chat. Brian, who's really a funny commenter. Brian checks in and he says, Jalen Hurts is the epitome of excellence. He is an angel descended from the heavens. His aura overwhelms the mere mortal, and his greatness is undeniable.
Brian's right. I mean, that just the drastic pendulum effect from week to week. I mean, the 1 week, the Eagles are the least prepared team in the history of football. The next
week, Jalen Hurts sucks, and 1 week he plays like a freaking MVP caliber quarterback.
And 2 weeks later, they figured it out. They're a Super Bowl contender again. I mean, yeah, he's a good quarterback.
His greatness is undeniable, Brian says. Brian, I love it, man. Thanks for the $5 super chat. Your support of the show is appreciated, my friend, even when you're hilarious when you do it. Good stuff, Johnny Mac. Final thoughts, man, on today's show. I know you're heading down to NovaCare Complex. I almost don't like how I feel about this game this weekend, John. I almost don't like it.
I'm pretty comfortable with this game.
I think we're going to win by 3 touchdowns for crying out loud.
Yeah, they got to play down to their opponent not to win by 3 touchdowns. This is going to be another blowout, and so you have to have this narrative.
Are we going to get Doug fired?
No, they're not going to fire him.
They shouldn't. They're such a bad organization. I mean, he's the first.
They're going to fire him after the season. They would have fired him in coming out of London.
Yeah, they're going to, but they're not. They shouldn't fire him after the year either, because maybe they should just force him into a Nick Sirianni move.
Continuity is better than the alternative, but part of life in the NFL. It's just the way it goes.
Yeah, I mean, they're just not a winning organization. It's one thing if you're a winning organization and you're not able to, win. Doug got them a winning season. I mean, he took them to the playoffs. I think his first 2 years.
He's a good coach, but he's swimming upstream down there.
Yeah, he is.
Tony Khan, get your shit together. Forget about wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, give your boy a call and say, "What the F are you doing, man?"
Hopefully, I'll see him this week. I'm not going to say what the F are you doing, but he knows I don't have tremendous amount of respect for that organization, but
I'm sure he knows it's warranted as well.
Well, I don't think he thinks that, but people in the moment, they think they're doing the best thing they should, but and he's not in charge of anything. His dad runs the team, and he's got a role, director of football operations strategy, some bullshit like that. But Trent Baalke's
Doug's going over there to Andy, John, when he gets fired, going over with Andy Reid.
Maybe if he might want to golf in Florida, man.
Well, he will probably for a year, but I don't know. Don't you think that might be too many? I mean, remember he took the year off, and you had mentioned at the time, rightfully so, you don't want to take yourself out of the mix, in the NFL, because names come and go quick. So I don't know. I mean, he just had a year off. You might not want to take another year off.
No, I presume, but I'm just saying you never know where somebody is in their personal life, and
I guess getting paid $5 million to golf in Florida.
He is getting up there, late 50s, I'd say. Maybe that's enough.
Maybe we'll see what happens with Doug. Appreciate everybody in the chat today. Johnny Mac, great show today. What did we get to on the like count, everybody? Did we smash the like button, or were we softies in the chat and we didn't get the likes? Let me check real quick before we get out of here. 154, not bad, everybody. Thanks for all the likes. Appreciate everybody supporting the channel. Johnny Mac, great show today, man. Get there safely to NovaCare, and we will talk to you tomorrow on Thursday's edition of Birds 365. All right, man?
All right, sounds good. Thanks, everybody.
See you tomorrow on Birds 365. Mike Gill tomorrow, 8:20 a.m. See you then, everybody.